Yes. Okay, got it. Hi, my name is Joy. I can see we are slowly reaching to a quorum, but I'm just going to ask that we start at 10:05, which will be 11:05 East African time. Is that fine? So in the next 2 minutes. In the
It is okay
meantime,
for me.
all right. In the meantime, karibuni kila mtu, welcome. Hi Charity, welcome. Hi Emily, karibu sana. Hi Javan, I can see you've joined. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I can see Griffins. Hello Griffins, welcome. I think this is Mr. Olabisi. Welcome. Joyce, karibu. Michael, karibu sana, and Naima pia karibu. So we start in a few minutes. And then, yeah, so see in a few, in 1 minute to be precise. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Joy Chenyuzi and I am your moderator and your host. I am very excited for today. I hope you are as well, and hence warm colors. And so, first off, let me ask, can everyone hear me? Can everyone see me? If you can just give me like a thumbs up. Okay, cool. Cool. All right. So we will get right into it. And thank you for the feedback. Such an interactive team, this one. So we will get right into it. Again, my name is Joyce Muzi and I am your moderator. Today's conversation is brought to you by Smart Talk Cafe, and the CEO is Maurice Sandati. He is here. He will be giving an introduction in a few minutes. One of our other partners is G-Talk, and they are represented by Joyce, who is here. Hi, Joyce, are you here? Okay, I suspect she is, and I think I saw Joyce somewhere. So Joyce as well will be giving an introduction. And then we have a very interesting and interactive panel. So why we're doing this is because today, as you all know, is World Refugee Day. And the theme for 2022 is, drum roll please. Anyone with an answer? Who knows what the theme for 2022 is for Refugee Day, World Refugee Day 2022? Anyone? Okay, so I will tell you. So the theme is the right to seek refuge, stroke the right to seek safety. And as we continue with today's conversation, I invite us all to just reflect on this theme. What does it mean for you? What does it mean? How do we provide safety to each other? How do we provide safety to refugees as individuals, as stakeholders in this conversation, and as states? And so with us, we have a very interesting panel. So I will start in the order as I can see on my screen. Will be I can see Javan. So Javan is from Rwanda. Um, he is a Congolese living in Rwanda, and he is going to help us understand the context of this conversation. He's going to give us the lived experience as a refugee. I can see Miss Naima. Yes, Miss Naima. Miss Naima is a feminist lawyer and activist, and she has been in the forefront for advocating for laws around refugee rights, around against human trafficking, against labor trafficking, sex trafficking, against gender-based violence. And so we are very excited to have you, Naima. Karibu sana. I can see Mr. Olabisi. So Mr. Olabisi is the head of humanitarian affairs for refugees and displaced persons in the Division of African Union Commission. So that is the title that he currently holds. However, he is one of the key players when it comes to the East African landscape. When we are talking about refugees and we're talking about displaced persons, he plays a very key role, and he has a very amazing understanding on policies and politics surrounding these issues. So karibu sana, Mr. Olabisi. Karibu means welcome. And yeah, so generally those three are our main. We have one more speaker who I cannot quite see right now. So I will get right into it and invite the CEO of Smart Talk Cafe to come on board and tell us a bit about himself, a bit about this initiative, and invite us to his wonderful meeting. So karibu.
Thank you so much, Joy, for that. I hope you guys can hear me very well and clearly. You can nod. Maybe you can nod. I see Javan holding himself. Yeah, you can nod and say, perfect. My name is Maurice Andati Shakwala, CEO, founder, Smart Talk Cafe, which is a sustainable development organization specifically focused majorly on sustainable development in Africa, making sure that communities are moving forward, and if it is sustainable development, and also looking into issues to do with organized crime. And one of our key engagements that we have been having is looking into organized crime, which has really brought us here today. So whatever I wanted to do is I wanted to share my screen so that as I'm doing my introductions, you can also see a little bit about the details about the organization. However, as I'm doing this, I really want to thank every single person and every single one who has joined us today. So this initiative about organized crime, we are really focused majorly on human trafficking and also sex trafficking. And the project is running in collaboration and in partnership with an organization called Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, which is an organization or a consortium of organizations and people who are coming together in order to look into issues of organized crime, looking at advocacy, looking at how they can create solutions specifically on issues to do with organized crime. And our key area or our key focus that we are working with them is specifically under sex trafficking and labor trafficking, and that is majorly in the East African region, focusing this year looking at Rwanda, looking at the key areas that are affecting specifically refugees who are coming from different countries coming into Rwanda. Also looking at the Rwandese themselves as they're moving across East Africa. How are they affected majorly by issues to do with human trafficking? And whatever we are doing is, number one, dealing on issues to do with research. So making sure that we understand what is the context and how this came to be, or we are looking into if they have created a solution and it is working for their country, how can these other countries, especially in the other East African countries, can learn from them. That's why looking at policies, looking at all these things, developing reports that are going to help in terms of advocacy of human trafficking, specifically at community level. So when I'll be finished, let me finish so that I can also give other people to continue. Our key area of engagement is to interconnect, number one, the government institutions with the community, looking at also international organizations that are dealing on issues to do with human trafficking, and the communities, looking at what are the toolkits that they're using, what are the strategies that they're using in order to make sure that trafficking is not happening. Then we are making sure that now the community understands what is human trafficking, how can they get help when maybe if they are the ones who are being affected, or there is someone else who they're really close to them, can be helped, and they can get help using the available avenues that have been given by government and also international organizations. Smart Talk Cafe has been running since 2018 until now, and I am really thankful for you guys joining us, especially in this journey, making sure that we can advocate for issues of human trafficking, specifically under sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And I wish that this conversation is going to be insightful. People are going to learn, and also we are going to open up the window for having conducive discussions on human trafficking. Thank you so much, and let's make this conversation an awesome. Thank you, and welcome. Joy,
thank you very much. Asante sana. And Dati, asante sana. I like your PowerPoint presentation, very interactive. And so now I would like to introduce Joyce Kimani of G-Talk. Joyce, if you're there, please. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to just drop the question or comment in the chat box so that we are able to get back to you. All right, I suppose Joyce has not joined yet, so we shall move on. And again, in order of who appears on my screen, I would like to invite Javan to, oh, okay. Joyce, I have seen your message, and whenever you're ready, just text us, and then we will accommodate you into the conversation. So Javan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, please. Thank you.
Okay, so Javan, I'd like to invite you to give us your experience. First of all, tell us who you are, and how did you end up where you currently are?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm seeing that I'm with many people here who might not be aware of who I am, and it's good to have that introduction so that to be aware of who is here and who is that person. I am Javan Mugenzi from Democratic Republic of the Congo, and currently living in Rwanda as a refugee since 2012. Yeah, it is really not easy to sum up of what is really needed here to help everyone to know really what is taking place. But I left my country due to civil war, which was taking place 2012 in April. And I got here in Rwanda in transit camp, and directly get to Sojani camp, which is currently I am based in, Kigeme refugee camp, located in southern province of Rwanda. Yeah, so in the beginning, it was not really easy because, yeah, first of all, people have depressed and also hopeless with no future, no any rain. But as days gone on, after 2012 until now, we are spending almost 10 years being in refugee camp, personally. But as in the beginning, it was with not getting familiar with the environment of Rwanda. I got acquainted with the environment, with people, with policies, and also getting some also improvement in terms of policies, how to treat refugees and how also giving a right to movement and also giving them opportunity to travel within a country, but also trying to look on opportunity in terms of socio-economic activities, which was different in the beginning, but as days gone on, there was improvement in terms of how to treat refugees, which has been making different in life of today, where people really can travel and do whatever and have competition in job market, though of course there is a high competition, and also people having a stigma on refugees, thinking maybe they are vulnerable people, they might not have what to do, or I mean, they haven't possibilities of doing like nationals. But there are little changes, which is giving me a hope with my fellow communities that there is something really good government of Rwanda in partnership with humanitarian agencies in Rwanda doing something about refugees, and also seeing themselves as people can do something about themselves, but also with the community whom they're living in with today. So this is the situation for today with Javan, unless maybe we can have a little bit questions after having a little introduction with me. Thank you. You can unmute. Chai, you can unmute.
I am terribly sorry about that. So thank you, Javan. You have shed light into what I was trying to get from you, into the information I tried to get from you, which is how you got into being into a different country as a refugee, caused civil war, right? And you have talked about how things are getting better now, there are better policies. And I'd just like to come to Mr. Olabisi. So Olabisi, kindly share with us some of the policies that are in place to ensure that refugees like Javan are able to move from country to country within the East African region and are able to be accommodated, particularly in Rwanda. So these policies that are grounded particularly in Rwanda.
He can unmute because it's muted.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me first of all thank Smart Talk Cafe for inviting me to this webinar. And also, let me also say that I am the former head of division of the Humanitarian Affairs, Refugees and Displaced Persons in the African Union Commission. I retired from the African Union Commission, having been seconded from the government of Nigeria to work in the African Union for about 18 years. I'm also an ambassador of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and I work in this area of migration, free movement, refugees and displaced persons, forced displacement in general. Let me first of all look at your topic, which is very, very germane, in the sense that this deals with mixed migration. Because when we are talking about trafficking in human beings, we do not know who they are. They may be refugees and they may be people seeking economic advantages elsewhere. So there are so many things that can cause people to leave. Like Javan just said, in his own case, it was civil war that
Right.
really led him into being displaced. He's forcibly left his own country and going into the unknown. But some people, it could be for economic reasons. So there are pull and push factors. However, in dealing with this particular topic, we need to look at what what the international community is doing to ameliorate the question of human trafficking. And this goes back to the United Nations having adopted the Convention Against Organized Crime, which was then supported by the protocol, the Palamo Protocol. The Palamo Protocol prevents, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children. This protocol is very, very germane in the sense that it goes along the lines of looking at the problem, both from the beginning to the very end. It looks at the question of recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power, or of a vulnerability of a person, or of the giving or receiving payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control of another person for the purpose of exploitation. I mean, this is a very, very comprehensive definition of human trafficking. So that you see that in this kind of mixed situation, anybody could fall into the question of human trafficking. There are, like I said, very many situations that can lead to this, and this situation, in this case, there are so many of scenarios. The question of looking at conflicts generally, which in many parts in East Africa, and in fact, which also affects a country like Rwanda, you find out that there are so many conflicts around the East African Great Lakes area that serve as push factors that can lead people into being trafficked as human beings. Then there is economic reasons. There are family reasons, cultural reasons, and so on and so forth. And so when we are looking at all this, pull and push factors, we see that indeed there are so many of these factors that can actually lead to an increased flow of people in this region. I would not want to, because I mean, Rwanda is what I can say, a receiving country. There are not many push factors in Rwanda that can push people, Rwandese themselves, out as refugees. Because Rwanda has, as we all know, Rwanda has maintained a very, very high level, good level of governance, let me put it that way. And in this area, you find out that a country like Rwanda has put in place appropriate policies, appropriate laws that can deal with the question of human trafficking. However, because of the environment, because of the neighborhood which Rwanda finds itself, it itself is a country that receives a lot of, refugees. And it's also a country which I do not think people who are into human trafficking themselves will actually use as a transit point, because the level of governance in Rwanda is such that you are going to be caught as much as possible, unless the daredevil, let me put it that way, will be the one that will want to operate, in a country like Rwanda. But again, there are so many countries that are bigger than Rwanda, perhaps, which again has the level of governance in this area that normally will not be able to be as strict as it is in Rwanda. Such countries around East Africa are countries where this kind of thing happens. And I know there are some countries again that are also, affected by conflict, where people also see it as a place where the level of governance is a bit relaxed, and then you can find such places as convenient for trafficking. So therefore, you have this kind of situation where this kind of thing, develop and thrive. So one thing that we want to look at how then do you deal with these pull and push factors.
Right. So I have a question, because you have mentioned transit points, and then you have talked about Rwanda as a receiving country, and some of this titles are a little bit vague. Would you please demystify? So what do you mean by a receiving country? What do you mean by transit points? Because you've talked about factors that make Rwanda not very attractive to traffickers, such as the policies. So would you please demystify some of this?
Okay, when we talk about receiving countries, we talked about receiving countries are countries who themselves are people who are hosts of refugees or other displaced persons. They receive countries, a country like Rwanda, a country like Uganda, receiving South Sudanese from Sudan, a country like Kenya, receiving Somali refugees from Kenya. From Somali refugees from Somalia. Then that makes Kenya a receiving country. That makes
Uganda
Rwanda
receiving
country. Now, transit countries are countries where you have people going to that country as a way of going further beyond that country. And I'll give an example. Libya, which before was not a transit country, Libya was a destination country. Libya was a country where people go to and find, refuge, or go to and find economic reasons to stay in Libya. But following the regime change after the death of Muammar Gaddafi and what we now see, because Libya is now a country that has an insecure environment, Libya has now become a transit country because the security is not as tight before. as before. So people take advantage of this and then try to get to Europe. So you see countries like Libya becoming transit country. Somebody moving from Kenya, from Somalia, crossing into Kenya and moving from there into the Sahara desert into and so on. Again, you can call Kenya as a transit country, right? So that's yeah.
Got it. Thank you for clearing that up. I will come back to you later on how we can regulate this movement, particularly when it comes to trafficking, because refugees are persons who already they are going through a lot. They have to flee from the country from one reason or the other. Trafficking is throwing a spanner to the works. It's a whole other situation. And speaking of receiving countries, Naima is from Uganda and she's a practicing lawyer there and she has worked with refugees there. So Naima, let me ask, Naima, can you hear me? First of all.
Yes, Joy, I can hear you.
Okay, welcome. So let me ask, working in a country that we have learned is a receiving country, I only knew it as a host country. What are some of the policies that are in place to protect refugees from being further trafficked? I mean, not when, so traffic, from being trafficked or from falling prey to just, to being, to being lured into labor trafficking or sex trafficking. What are some of the policies that are in place in your country that protect persons who are refugees?
Thank you very much, Joy, for the question. First of all, I'd like to thank Smart Talk Cafe for sending me an invitation to be part of this conversation. I am honored to be sharing a platform with great men. So back to the question, I'd just like to make the record purposes that Uganda is the largest refugee host in the whole of East Africa, and I think globally now. If we look at the total of 2 million refugees in East Africa, Uganda hosts about 1.47 million. And therefore that makes us with the biggest population of refugees in the country. So the policies that we've put in place that protect refugees, first and foremost, Uganda boasts in having a well-documented system of refugees. So our refugees are documented and we keep track of which refugees in which refugee camp or which settlement area. So we do have two categories of refugees. We do have refugees that are in the settlements, that are in the camps, and those that are urban refugees, those that live within, the urban areas in the community, not specifically in a camp. So the policies we have the Refugee Act of 2006. This act or law promotes free movement and right to co-work arrangements for refugees. So our refugees are not in a vulnerable, they're in a vulnerable state, but not too much vulnerability to the fact that they can be lured into trafficking. So what the government has also done in the previous 6 or so years is to introduce a national skilling for young people, and this is inclusive of refugees. So what back then I used to do with the refugee community is we skill them, give them skills where they can start enterprises or small businesses, and in that way they can earn a decent income, following the SDGs 2030 of leaving no one behind and ensuring that everyone has a decent work and can earn income to make them sustain themselves. So we skilled over 10,000 refugees in the camps of Kiriandongo and in Germany. And these refugees with the skills are able to start enterprises or get employability skills where they can earn a decent income. The other thing we have an anti-human trafficking law in the country, which is the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act 7 of 2009. In as much as this is there, Uganda being the country that is, with our system where many of the young people are unemployed, it does not automatically say that refugees will get the opportunity of employment. However much we have these policies in place, we still have, some defects here and there. And we see that so many youth are being labor trafficked, in quotes, because they go under the disguise of getting, employment in mainly the Gulf region. However, it turns out that with so many that have repatriated back home, they have been exploited and they've been in servitude, they have been trafficked. And so even as much as people are going to seek labor, even as much as we have laws to regulate the labor exploitation companies, some still fall victim. And now with the free movement that the refugees are given, it is not protection for the refugees that they wouldn't be trafficked as individuals to also go abroad, trying to seek greener pastures. So yes, we do have policies, we do have well-documented data management systems, we do have laws that protect the refugees, but like the previous speaker said, we do not have a strict governance and implementation system that really tracks down which people move where. Us being having a democratized kind of community or social life where no one will ask you, your ID, your identification to get to know whether you're really a national or a refugee. That is something, unless, out of the ordinary cases that they might step and like, show us your identity card, but it's not mandatory to move with documents that speak about yourself, in public. So this has also made people vulnerable, to trafficking. So we are both as a transnational country, as a transition country, or a country that directly traffics people.
Right. So so let me ask, because you have talked about, again, so you and Mr. Olabisi agree that the gaps in implementation of policies and some of the loopholes through which traffickers are able to seep into the system and just recruit persons. So other than government loopholes or gaps, what other ways are traffickers able to infiltrate communities, such as, because I know, like, for instance, in Kenya, as much as refugees, the urban and refugees in camps, most of them live within communities. So how are these traffickers able to infiltrate communities and then further decide to exploit them, particularly say in Uganda, or you can just speak about East Africa as a whole, so other than poor policy?
Okay. Yeah, can you hear me? I think my network is not stable. Can you hear me, Joy? Okay. Yeah, so the other thing that has led to traffickers infiltrating the community is that if you look at the statistics, the majority of the persons being trafficked or seeking labor outside the country are people living in poverty. So the vulnerability status is quite high. And these are people who are desperate, looking for greener pastures or better options outside the country. And with that, when you're vulnerable, people can take advantage of you. So you find that these are people who have failed to get employed in the country. These are people who have had educations, but their education cannot really earn them jobs. So with that situation, people are kind of easy to be manipulated into trafficking. And I say this because some people would want, to get jobs like their counterparts. And if there's no job that is paying you enough to sustain yourself and your family, then the only option would be to leave the country and go and work outside the country. So traffickers use those situations and scenarios to infiltrate the community. That is one way. The second way is also the community people living in the families. So when a family A has a daughter, working maybe in the Western world, let's say in the UK or in one of the Gulf countries, a very good paying job, family B would compare their child to the child of family A, and they're like, if you are like so-and-so, maybe go abroad, our lives would be better. So the community not knowing, not having enough knowledge to know that going abroad is not the only option to sustain yourself or get a better income to survive. That has also led to traffickers exploiting the situation. So with that desperate and dire need of comparison for the family and the children in the family, also makes traffickers contact families directly and lure them into, the children being victims of trafficking. I think that's all I can say for now.
Thank you so much, because when you're talking about how so something like poverty is taken. Already you, as a refugee, you're already in a bad position. Number two, there's poverty knocking at your doors. Number three, you start comparing lives. Number four, you feel the need to bring your entire community, like to lift your entire community. And so seeking for greener pastures becomes a very viable option. So let me ask Javan, I know that in Kenya, we have recruitment agencies. So recruitment agencies are the agencies that look for labor and then go ahead and export labor. So Javan, do you have recruitment agencies in Rwanda who are particularly, who have a particular scope towards refugees, who look particularly for refugees so as to incorporate them and send them out for labor? And how does that work? And then Naima, please tell me about some of the policies you have in place in Uganda that govern agencies such as the ones in Kenya. And then Mr. Olabisi, please talk about the overall, the East African region when it comes to these agencies, because these agencies have become quite notorious. So what are the general policies within the East African region that help govern and protect particular persons who actually protect refugees because they're already vulnerable? So Javan, let's start with you, then come to Naima, and then we go to Mr. Olabisi.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I wish that policy Kenya has introduced it in recruiting refugees, creating such agents, creating refugees for labor. I wish it could have been really implemented here as well. Maybe at least that could really make a great change and also increase the great hope within young refugees who are pursuing different degrees here and there. Yeah, regarding to that question, here in Rwanda, there is no such agency. What they do, it is to be less restrictive in giving refugees opportunities, which is also something to appreciate. Also trying to, because if you compare like before, it wasn't something easy to make a movement here and there. But today, what they have been trying to give a space for refugees if they have something to do. And this is mainly focusing on economic activities, businesses, something Neema said in Uganda, empowering young refugees in entrepreneurship and business ideas and creating, and that is something they're putting much effort so that really they can reduce such vulnerability within refugees, especially young people. And they can try to invite some financial institutions to support such business ideas, which can support refugees, but also not young people, but also refugees in general who are having a good idea and also try to implement their project and earn something and paying back slowly with less interest, so that really to promote their economic life within refugee camp, but also host community. Yeah, and the thing also I can say, which I can like, the policy which is good is promoting, giving refugees a space of education, so that really, I think that awareness also can really contribute a lot, because the less people are educated, the less they become informed. But the more they get access to education, the more they get informed, but also get aware of what is taking place here and there, and that also promotes their confidence in even looking for that employment somewhere else. Yeah, that is something, and also something I can just say regarding to identity. The document which can really be easy helping refugees to identify themselves as refugees within a country, and also be easy to look for an opportunity like private institution. In that case there, it happens, but also it is a rare thing, because it is a philosophy which hasn't been in the mind of many institutions within Rwanda. Yeah, because they still have something in mind, like refugees, they are not really, they can't be really trusted. Yeah, they are documented to be trusted and document, they prove that, but they haven't made such kind of campaign to let some institution being aware that refugees are the people who can do such things. That is maybe the thing I can say that they calculated about that, because there should be something campaign to raise awareness between such organization, humanitarian, either non-governmental and governmental, so that really they can try seeing possibilities and capacities in refugees, because they are getting big, so which is really something really to get interested in them, as long as they are giving space to be educated. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Javan. Thank you for pointing out the opportunities that are presented to refugees in Rwanda, and the gaps also that exist. Thank you so much. So let me ask Mr. Olabisi, would you please come on board and also help us reflect on on Ms. Naima, please come on board and help us reflect a little bit on the existence of such agencies in Uganda, or lack thereof, and the policies governing them.
Okay, thank you very much, Joy. So in Uganda, we do have majorly 3 policies or laws that govern the recruitment agencies. The first one is the Ugandan Employment Act, which is a law that regulates employment generally in the country. And then that specified to the recruiting agents is the recruitment of Ugandan migrant workers regulations. This focuses mainly on the companies that do migrate, participate in exploitation of labor. However, there's some loopholes in the law, because you find that this law just outlines what amounts into a certified company that is certified to export labor, and it does not give the guidelines of what they need to do in details, nitty-gritties, protecting the employees that are being taken, abroad to work. We also have the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act that tries to cover up the loopholes. However, if you look at the employment system in the Gulf, that it's quite different from what the provisions of our laws say, which is the kafala system. The kafala system, on its surface, if you look at it, it's servitude as slavery, without any, ifs and buts. Because if I can keep your documents and hold you, in my home without freedom for you to choose when to leave, to me that is slavery and servitude. So our laws are different from the laws of the kafala system, which is being used in the Gulf. And now the question comes on which law takes precedence when there is, labor exploitation. Is it the country of the employee, or the country of the employer? And this is where the problem comes. So for the Ugandan young person who's been exported to go and work abroad, the kafala system to us seems like slavery in a way, because you holding my documents and not giving me the freedom to choose or the freedom to rest, being used 24 hours a day. To me, a Ugandan citizen who is guided by the laws of Uganda that allows me 2 days of rest in a week, that says I am supposed to work from, for 8 hours a day, being abused beyond what your law provides, to me, that is slavery. So that's the loophole. Now, our countries need to come with a system, a law that regulates that relationship with the countries of Gulf on what amounts to legally accepted working hours for citizens of Uganda, and how to ensure that these hours are there too. I think, to me, that's what I can say. Our systems are there, our policies are there, but when the young people or the people go to the Gulf, our laws stop at the airport, as they're going, and that's it. Outside of that, they're not protected by the laws of the country.
And I think that I'm glad that Mr. Why am I calling him Ologisi? So please tell me how to pronounce your name, so I don't keep mispronouncing it, please. And I'm sorry for mispronouncing it so far, but would you please come on board and pick up from where Naima has left off, talking about where the laws of the country end, where they begin, and how we're able to further govern these recruitment agencies.
I think he's muted. We cannot hear what he's saying.
Oh, okay. Mr. Oluvisi?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
now we
My
can
name
hear
is
you.
Olabisi. Olabisi.
Olabisi.
But you can call me Ola, you know. Now,
Okay.
yeah, really, we are going into two different things. Well, we are talking about human trafficking. The agencies that that is being mentioned are not trafficking in human beings. They are operating within a legally accepted regime in each of the countries. They are not trafficking in human beings. Now, what happens with the kafala system in the Middle East is their own law. So there's the need for us to do what we call in law conflict of laws, and see where you can appropriate the laws of, say, Uganda, Ethiopia, or whatever with those countries. And that is that's within the regime of each country to do that, in order to, you know, uh, do a kind of comparable law of each other that can, you know, sustain their interest. That's number one. Number two, the people that really engages in human trafficking don't go into laws. They don't go into all these things. They are people that walk in the shadows. Let me put it that way. They walk on the ground. They are not known. So there is an investigative process through which you can actually discover them and see what they are doing. They are not into any of the kind of laws or whatever that we are talking about. And that is why you have things like the Palamo Protocol that engages, you know, in dealing with these people. So we are going to, in this regard, we are going to really look into the processes of how we can actually combat human trafficking. That's it. So how do you then profile them? We need to profile these people. We need to get them into a space where we can deal with them, because these are nefarious people, and they, with their nefarious activities, which impinges on refugees and other undocumented, you know, migrants. So in actual fact, how then do we profile this kind of guys in a way that will mitigate the incidence of human trafficking in the region, and in particular in Rwanda? So that's number one thing. Number two thing is that one has to commend countries like Uganda for having thrown up its doors open and welcome a lot of refugees. Incidentally, I quite agree with Nema that Rwanda currently serves as the highest host of refugees on the continent, and perhaps in the world. Perhaps, you know, one of the things that Uganda has done is to encourage refugees not only to have their own businesses, but also they can also work within Uganda. And I believe from what Javan is saying, the same thing also happens in a country like Rwanda too. So these are, you know, using you know, the instruments of the African Union, the 1969 instruments, which makes an obligation of receiving states to allow refugees to work in their country. So one has to commend these two countries, Rwanda, Uganda. Yeah, for espousing and maintaining their their treaty obligation in this regard. So at this point, I think one of the things that we need to do is look at how we can then profile traffickers and see how then we can actually see how we can mitigate the activities. But rather, with the agencies that we are talking about, they are legal entities, and so we cannot do anything with what they are doing. And what happens to people on the other side is according to their so-called laws in that country. The
system.
So we need to work on that and see how we can then use a comparable ways in which can mitigate the effects of a conflict of laws between the two countries. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Because what I hear from you is that we need to have, from you, both you and Naima, is that we need to have a policy that guides, that creates a nexus for all countries to be able to interact with the kafire system, such that no one is being hardballed in this process. And so I can see that Joyce has joined us. So Joyce is from GTalk, and they do a lot of work around, particularly around people who, refugees and people who are then displaced and further they go and they are abused, they get into labor slavery, not for lack of a better word, but let's call it slavery, and they are abused in the work. So Joyce, can you hear me now?
Hi, how are you? I can hear you really pretty well. I hope you guys can hear me. My internet is acting.
We can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Karibu.
Oh, thank you so much. I was actually in the meeting, but I was offline, so I didn't show my face, and because of the bandwidth. Yeah,
fair enough, no problem. So let me ask, what picking up from, I'm glad you were in the meeting, because picking up from what Mr. Olubisi has said, Mr. Olu has said, and what Naima has said as well. What is the work that GTalk particularly does? What agencies are you in partnership with that helps in? Do you have an agency that helps in citing who traffickers are and combating that? Are you working together with, are you partnering together with people who combat human trafficking, and how does that go? So what are some of the jobs which you are involved in, the partnerships, if you may?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending this meeting. Please alert me when my internet drops off, because I can be talking and you are not hearing me and you won't say. So my name is Joyce Kimani. We are a network of experts who are interested in fighting organized crime. And by this we mean we are a body made up of lawyers, journalists, law enforcement officers, any person in the spaces where they are interested in fighting organized crime. We even have artists, musicians, and people like, even in Kenya, we call them the mama mboga, that woman on the street who is selling veggies, but is a human rights defender and is championing any aspects of organized crime. So let me just give a brief background, because we deal in different places where organized crime is rife. For example, with human smuggling, human trafficking, child labor, flora and fauna crimes. But today our main interest is on human trafficking and smuggling, and in particular the smuggling of refugees. And at this we have a project called the Resilience Fund, and the Resilience Fund does exactly what you're doing today. Can people still hear me? I'm doubting myself.
Yes, you can.
Under this we work. we work a lot with partners on the ground into doing what we're doing today, exactly something like what you're doing today, creating conversations around issues related to organized crime. And we believe that the trafficking of refugees is an area of main concern, mainly because we've seen, like in the last few years, traffickers take advantage of the vulnerability. I'm Kikuyu, so that word disturbs pronouncing. Traffickers take advantage of the vulnerability, basically because once a refugee is in a country where they don't know themselves, they've never been there before, most of them are victims of war, so they run as quickly as possible to a place where they can get shelter. These are persons without papers, without any form of accommodation, without any money on them. And we've seen over time that traffickers really run towards them, and they are, in some cases, they're the first people to receive these refugees. And so the exploitation comes in, they come in with very enticing offers. So we're going to give you jobs, we're going to take you, for example, and I'm saying this, where I live in Kenya, I come from Nairobi, and we've seen them being used for basic jobs from across East Africa. Most refugees are either used, unfortunately, as house helps or these other very low paid jobs. And the worst bit is these people do not even know they're being trafficked, or they don't know they're victims of trafficking. They don't know that they were sneaked from their countries per se into looking for these jobs. And so once you start creating conversations like this, people pause and they're like, by the way, I was trafficked and I didn't know it. Or I found myself in a country where I didn't have money, I didn't have food, and I didn't even know how I landed there. And then I ended up, for example, being a house help. And when I got the contract, I was told I was going to be, for example, a guard.
Hello, is it me alone that Joyce has disappeared? Or?
Yeah, we've lost her. I can't
We
hear
lost
her.
her.
Okay,
I can't
okay.
hear her again. I don't know, maybe.
Okay, I think that's all of us. Sorry, yeah, she mentioned that her connection is a bit shaky.
Yeah.
So let me invite Maurice to also talk a little bit about the same thing that Joyce was talking about. What are some of the advocacy works that you have done around the area of human trafficking? Joyce, I think she got she got cut off when she was speaking about how some people realize, wait, I have been trafficked without really knowing they were trafficked once they listen to such conversations. So Maurice, Mr. Andasi, would you please come on board and help us know a little bit about the work you have been doing to educate people, to reach out to communities, and knowing a lot of information, some information about GTOC. Maybe you can continue and contribute to Joyce's conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. So most of the time, or the kind of areas that we have been working with Joyce and Global Initiative is identifying specific areas where, number one, identifying how are these people being trafficked? What are the avenues? What are the different avenues that are being used specifically for trafficking? And I'll give an example. If you look at the report that was developed by Never Again Rwanda, the Rwanda Investigation Bureau, there is also IOM, and they came up with a report and they realized that when they are doing research, especially under human trafficking in Rwanda, you'll find that most of them are being trafficked in the aspect of labor, and they're being told with friends. So I'll give an example. I am a friend of Javan. I am in Kenya. And I tell Javan, okay, there is an opportunity here for work. Please come, we are going to be given. And you find that is how these people who are dealing in human trafficking are attracting people from these countries like Rwanda and every single thing. Then you look at also refugees who are in the camp, and maybe Congolese refugees. The same way, Javan is a citizen, maybe he has already left maybe the camp and he's sitting in the community, tells this specific person, please come, there is work here that is going to be done. Because people have already known that Rwanda has a tough system, especially in terms of leadership. They are looking for different ways in which now they can bring these young people towards these young people or communities, refugees, towards their trap. And the only way they can do it is if this person has already moved across the border. So, and at the border, if they say Javan is the one who has invited this specific person and is an uncle, if they ask them, they'll tell, no, I'm going to visit someone in Kenya, and it's just going to be only 1 week or 2 weeks. After that, then that person disappeared. So those are the kind of areas that we are identifying and looking into, the lowest point where we're looking to and seeing how can we cover these specific gaps to make sure that if this person is being invited in Kenya, that procedures that this person has to go, there's specific document that they need to have. There are specific ways in which they're going to apply for them to move out. And that is how now Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime works with an organization like Smart for Cafe, where now we are the ones now going to disseminate the information and tell them in government that these specific laws, if you're to travel, you need this specific document. So you go and tell that community member so that they understand that someone telling you to come without documents, then saying that they're going to make documents for you, they're going to take a little bit of an advantage, and which ends up to issues to do with human trafficking and all that. So when I'm finishing is whatever we're doing is now to make sure that the community, at the community level, in Rwanda, we call the administration the Mudugudu. How does the Mudugudu understand issues to do with human trafficking? Then can he be the one to call people together in meetings, forums, so that now we can discuss in this context so that they do understand. If they're being called for work, there are specific procedures that they need to go through so that now the government and also the community knows where this specific person is, where they're going, and it is easier for them to know how they're going to work hand in hand. Then lastly, now looking at Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, how are these countries working together so that when people or individuals are moving across the country, if refugees from Congo come to Rwanda, then they come to Kenya, how are these countries working hand in hand so that we make sure that, as Neymar said, if they get into the airplane they've gone, how do these countries work together to make sure that they cover such kind of things? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moses. You have talked about the involvement of the community when it comes to knowing, okay, so number one, these are refugees. Number two, they are being preyed on by person X and Y in this way and this way. So I want to ask Javan to tell us some of the instances he might have seen or spotted or heard of that have pointed to the fact that this particular person is definitely being trafficked. Maurice has mentioned the documentation, and Mr. Olubisi mentioned that we need to profile the persons who are involved in trafficking. So in this conversation, I'd like us to just profile them in using words first of all, and then Smart Talk Cafe and GTalk can use this information. So Javan, have you seen experiences, have you heard of experiences where someone is being trafficked, and how does that look like?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. These issues haven't been documented to really see the evidences, but that can't avoid what we heard and what we hear, like people are living in such environment. And that is a kind of experience I can give. I kind of think I will give more, it is more about sex trafficking within some young girls. And you know, young girls, as refugees, they are facing much needs rather than boys they can. And it is easy for them taking advantage within that needs. And that is really where they're getting trapped to be trafficked, but they do not really know that they are trafficked. That's the problem. because someone is using that that kind of businesses, kind of activities which are really legal, and someone finds later that really has been trapped in a trap that defines later after sometimes that really has been trafficked. And the issue is that this is not something which is taking like maybe someone getting outside or abroad. It is something happening within, and it's not easy to really court search, because the people are doing that, they know that it is illegal within Rwanda. So they do it in strategic way, which can't be easy really to be caught and also get, because they know that they can be penalized seriously. So this is the kind of issue which is taking place within many young refugees, especially girls. And this is due something Myanmar and also the humanitarian representative has been saying about the poverty is the one of the factor in context of refugees, which is contributing some to be trafficked in ignorantly without knowing really that they're being trafficked. So that is the kind of issue that I observed that, and I heard that within some. And it is really not easy something to point and say this is, because it is not recorded, and they know that the Rwandan government is very restrictive on that issue. So they do much to hide that information in a way which can't be easy to find out, unless maybe people do research and which is more investigative to find more details about that. But I can't ignore and say it is not there. It is, but in a secret way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Javan, for sharing. You have brought up the issue of sex trafficking, which half of the time is overlooked when we're talking about trafficking. So we talk about labor trafficking more than we speak about sex trafficking. And I would just like to ask Mr. Olubisi to please give us some insights on what the numbers are like, what the figures are like, what the momentum has been like over time, particularly in East Africa, with regards to how many people are actually getting sex trafficked. Are we doing enough documentation as a region? What can be done to curb sex trafficking, particularly amongst refugees? Mr. Olu?
I think you can help him to be unmuted.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. The problem with trafficking in human beings is that they are under the radar. So they are not documented. They will not be documented. If they are documented, that means they are there's kind of refugee identification program. Yeah. But then in this case, they are under the radar. They are not in any way documented. And that is what Javan just said. People don't even know that they are being trafficked. Yeah. If it's a question of people smuggling other people, that is, there's a difference between, of course, a thin line between trafficked and people smuggling. Yeah. When they are being smuggled, they are being told, okay, you are going to go and get work somewhere. But meanwhile, the job they want to give them is not normal job. They are going to be sold into a kind of sexual, kind of like prostitution. So exactly, we have to be very careful about this. Number one. Number two is that this kind of situation, not just about going across the border, but even within our countries, maybe Rwanda, maybe Kenya, Tanzania, or Uganda, right? So there, and the numbers you really can't say. But even those who are going across the border, going to other countries, particularly Europe or Middle East, we really cannot say this is a number that we are given. But suffice to say that there are several cases where girls and women have been subjected to this kind of sexual slavery. Let me put it that way. And this is something that we need to really, combat by identifying the source. That is looking at the people. And that's what I call about profiling. Looking at the people that are involved in this kind of thing and nip it at the very at the bud. And then again, we also need to look at where the transits are, where they are going through, whether it is Egypt, whether it is Libya, and so on. Sometimes it's a place like Tunisia, where people try to cross into the Middle East, or going through places like going through Yemen. But now Yemen is in trouble, so there's no, people are going through Egypt and so on. So one thing is that we need to look at how then we can actually stop the kind of method through which they transit these people. So these are the people that, and these are things that you guys are doing in one of these in the organization, like SCC, or the other lady, Joyce, who says they are into ameliorating the kind of criminality that is going on in this regard. Then we can see, we can actually stem the incident of people going into sexual slavery. So I mean, I think that's what, yeah.
Thank you so much. You have talked about the lack of documentation being a very big issue. I mean, it is done in secret, so of course getting the numbers is hard. So everyone who's watching, everyone who's listening in, please feel free to interact with us. Drop a comment, drop a question. If there's anything you'd like to share, please do. Now, at this juncture, I'd like to invite David. David raised his hand and he says that he has had experience working with Never Again Rwanda, and he'd like to share this. So please, David, Karibu, come on board and tell us a little bit more about your experiences with working with Never Again Rwanda, particularly with an inkling towards human trafficking. Is David still here? David Kagoro. David. David. Okay, I think we have lost him. I mean, I can see him, but I think his connection is a little bit lost. Okay, so as we wait for David to come on board, I have a question to Naima. Naima, we have talked about that people are not documented is an issue, that trafficking is done in the shadows is a very big deal. Of course, that is why it is done. How can the law protect an individual who knows that they have been trafficked? So for instance, I realize, wait, I am a victim of trafficking. Also, while we're in the same breath, Nema, please tell us the difference between human trafficking and human smuggling. And how do I know this? So my main question is, I have recognized this. How do I go about approaching the authorities, or how do I go about making sure that I am listened to, heard?
Thank you very much, Joy, for that question. So I'm going to try and answer first the difference between smuggling and trafficking. One, smuggling is when you knowingly know what is going to be done. For example, you have no documentation, but you need to move from point A to B. For example, you need to cross the border. Let's say I am from Uganda and I'm going to cross into Kenya, but I don't have the appropriate documents that will let me go through legally. So I'll use the corners that is not the formal channel. Like instead of going to the custom to be given a visa, I will find a way of of getting into Kenya without officially being documented that I moved from Uganda to Kenya. Then human trafficking is when one is taken with either their consent behind deceit, or they are coerced, or are defrauded into a certain, okay, for a layman, this is a bit explanation. I'm told I'm going to work, let's say, to the Gulf. I'm going to work for, let's say, security company, and I'm going to earn such a certain amount of money. That is at the face of it. That's what I'm going to do. So I do process my documentations and everything, but on reaching where I'm going, my documents are taken and then I'm taken into a brothel. And what I was told was what I'm going to do is not what I'm doing at the moment. So to me, that is basically trafficking. Like being told you're going to be a housemaid or a house manager, and then after that you take it to a brothel for sex trafficking, or sex exploitation. That is trafficking. So that's the difference between, I think that smuggling is when you know what you're doing per se. You don't have the documentations and you need to move from point A to B. And trafficking is even when you're in the knowledge, but it's by deceit that you're taken to do a certain thing, or by fraud, deceit. Sometimes you're even forced or even smuggled. Yeah, so smuggling can lead to human trafficking, but not necessarily that smuggling. Human trafficking is smuggling. Human trafficking can be out of your own will, but behind deceit and fraud. And the other question you asked me, I beg your pardon, I think that slipped my in my mind.
No problem. So I am a person who realizes, wait, this is not what I signed up for. Or yes, I knew I was going into murky waters when I got into this without having any documentation. But now this is too much. I need to find a way back, either back home or to the authorities. How do I go about this? I am a refugee from Rwanda and I'm in Kenya, or I'm a refugee from say Somalia and I'm in Uganda. How do I go about this within our East African borders?
Okay, first thing first is, there's a problem with us as a community or countries. When we look at trafficked persons, we look at them as criminals and not victims. So the first thing we need to do as countries, policy implementers, the police, the lawyers, or any other person who is trying to help the victim, is don't look at them with the lens of them being criminals, but look at them with the lens of victims. When they are victimized, then you'll be informed on what to do. The first thing you need to do, what prevents people from coming out and saying that they've been trafficked, it's because of the status they will get immediately. You'll be considered a criminal. So as countries and policymakers and policy implementers, the first thing we need to do is realize that these people are victims and then take them in the status of a victim and help them. The first thing I think we need to do, if you have realized that you've been trafficked and you're not going to be victimized, you're a victim, you accept that I'm a victim, go seek help, go to the right authorities and report. Yeah. Because as far as I'm concerned, I know the East African region, we do have centers for victims, like victims of trafficking. So go report and then give your testimony. One of the reasons the lawyers fail to prosecute perpetrators of trafficking is because we don't have enough evidence to hold the perpetrators accountable. We don't have testimonies. We don't have evidence that the person was trafficked. You don't need actual evidence, but with the whole system of what happened, that is enough evidence enough. Who connected you to who, that is evidence enough. So we don't have that. We don't have testimony. And without evidence in law, you cannot win a case. That's why the perpetrators are going scot-free, because we don't have those in place. So the other thing is also accepting that you have been victimized. Sometimes people do not want to accept that they are victims. So if you acceptance is important. Accept and say, yes, I was a victim of trafficking. Let me go seek help. When you seek help, then that is where the whole assistance will be rendered to you. First, you need psychosocial support. As people, we need to ensure, or countries or people that are working with victims and survivors of trafficking, we need to give these people psychosocial support. That is the most important thing, because you don't know what they have gone through. You don't know the torture they've been through. So instead of looking at them and stigmatizing them, let's give them the social support that they need, because they actually do need it. Then two is find a survival-centered approach for these victims, because as lawyers, we are quick to just look for, tell me what happened, what are the facts, but listen to the person, give them an opportunity to listen to them, and then see how to help them. All victims don't require the same help or assistance. Every victim is unique in what they're seeking for you. Some might want prosecution of their perpetrators. Some might just want to be taken home, and that's all they want. Some just need, skills probably that might put them in a better position to reincorporate back in the community. Yeah. And also as governments, the government needs to really put up systems that are there to assist. I think that's the biggest weakness that we have as East African countries, not Rwanda per se, but even my country. We don't have outright systems that are there to assist persons who have been victims, of trafficking or survivors of trafficking. It's about, you're repatriated back home, that's it, you're done. You're forgetting that the community is going to stigmatize these people. They don't really know how to reintegrate back in the community and the society and the families. They have gone through a lot. Some are even suicidal. They think of taking their own lives. So then how do governments and different organizations, the CBOs and NGOs are going to assist them to reintegrate back in the community without stigmatization? And how are they going to reevaluate their life and think of doing something better? Give them the skills so that they can earn a decent income. Give them the skills so that they can get a decent job back home. We don't have that system. The governments leave it to the NGOs and different organizations to do that, but it is the mandate of the government to take care of the citizens in their country. Yeah, that's all I can say for now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Naima. Very insightful. Now, Joyce, I see that you're back, and I would like that you please pick up from where Naima has left. Naima has talked about that the civil societies are organize themselves, and then they get involved in how to resettle individuals who went and now they're back, and they need to come back home, or they need someone to listen to them and things like that. Do you work with such organizations? Have you worked with programs? Do you have programs in place that support individuals who have been trafficked and have been trafficked, and now they're looking back to being reinstated? And how do you go about this? If Joyce, you're there.
Hi, I am finally here. Please alert me when I drop off again. I don't know, my network misbehaves, and I'm so sorry about that.
So. No problem.
And I'm so sorry about that. Yes, we do work a lot with refugees and other people who are victims of human trafficking. We do a lot of repatriation. Is it repatriation? We've worked with cases where we've partnered with organizations to bring people back into their individual countries, mostly victims of trafficking. But I think our main area of importance is one of the things that I would want to state is we do not discourage people from going to seek opportunities in different parts of the world. What we encourage more is the legality of it. And we work a lot with ensuring that these refugees are not trafficked. So how do we do this? Number one, we partner with organizations like Smart Talk Cafe and other organizations who help people before they leave the country. They would know what is expected of them. So you train them on basics, you train them on soft skills, number one, and then you train them on different aspects, digital, physical, and psychosocial security. You give them basics like teaching them how to protect themselves from abuse. One of the most interesting things for me is even giving them way out in case something happens. You give them the contact details of the ambassadors, you give them contact details of other, for example, if it's Kenyans, other Kenyans who live in that place, you give them escape mechanisms. So in case things become haywire, they can be able to, seek help. But not to mention, one of the other things we do both the firefighting, the proactive and the reactive. And then in the reactive, we work a lot with organizations on the ground who are directly involved in rescuing people who found themselves as victims of trafficking. We partner with an organization called Chitea. I don't know what Chitea is in food, but it's it's based in Nairobi, and I'll drop the full name. It's called Counter. When I say it, I'll say it wrongly, but it's down there. I will copy it and I paste it before the meeting ends. And we work a lot with organizations that are called, for example, an organization called Stop the Traffic. Creating awareness is more important because I feel like most people who end up as trafficking, either if you're a refugee or you're not a refugee, you end up trafficked because you are not aware of what is expected of you, or you didn't know anything about the whole situation. So if you knew, you would be able to take charge from the word go. And so I believe that one of the biggest things we do is the awareness creation. And it has worked wonders because, like I mentioned before, we've had instances where people, the light bulb goes on and they're like, oh my God, I'm a victim of trafficking. But what this has helped is now they know. So when they see a particular potential victim, they're the ones who are stopping it. We've created like champions, anti-trafficking champions who are taking this war themselves. Another major place we're involved in is in the beach boys trafficking, which people do not talk about. But we've seen cases of beach boys being trafficked to South Africa and Europe, which has been on the increase. And we've really invested in conversations around this, and we've invested in just creating same ambassadors of where beach boys go, and either they share the stories or they help the fellow beach boys to either to prevent them from being trafficked for sex or for either manual labor in these places. For beach boys, we are looking into creating safe houses because like you've seen in trafficking, there are no safe houses for men. Most of them, because of the male machoism, men are believed to, they can handle this, they're tough. And particularly, we've partnered with different organizations, and we are now looking into creating these safe spaces because most victims, including refugees who are trafficked and then they are rescued per se, end up being put in police cells, or they end up being put in unhealthy condition, which is, re-traumatizing the victims. So as GI, we are keenly interested in this. We're interested in creating safe spaces for people who are trafficked and people who are potential victims, and, just ensuring that we lower these numbers. Like Andati mentioned, these numbers are really scary. They keep going higher and higher. And with trafficking, and I always say this, with trafficking, the worst bit is the human being is the commodity. So I would call on, I've seen so many interesting people in this panel, and I would call on us having like more conversations on this and looking for areas where everyone can bring in their expertise so that we can stop these numbers. Thank you. Did I break?
You did such a good job. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you for highlighting the work that you're doing, the work that GTalk is doing, and I mean, it helps to shed. For me, I mean, it gives me an inkling of hope that there's work being done around trafficking. There's work being done around advocacy and just informing people on what they need to do. So thank you so much. Now, let me see. Is David back? David? No, I think we lost David. Yeah, we definitely lost David. Now, if he comes back, well, I can see, like, I think he's talking, but I can't quite hear him, but it's fine. Well, hoping he comes back. I have a question for Mr. Olu. Now, sometime I think beginning of this year, there was conversations about UK and the Rwandan government coming into speaking and deciding. But I can see you smiling. You know where I'm going with this. But as of I think a few weeks back, yeah, a few weeks back, Mr. Gillian, Mr. Gillen, the UNHCR Assistant High Commissioner for Protection, said that UNHCR remains firmly opposed to arrangements that seek to transfer refugees and asylum seekers to third countries in the absence of sufficient safeguards and standards. Now, my question is, what exactly does this statement mean? And is this program for, I want to say the settlement, but I know that is not the correct term, but is this program for settlement effective? Will it still happen? We explored and said, you pointed out that Rwanda is safe in terms of safe governance, proper governance, but when UNHCR puts out a statement like this, what exactly does this mean? And what is the precedence being set? What would you please help us demystify this statement?
Well, let me thank you for that question. Let me first of all start by saying that what UK is trying to do with Uganda is against
Rwanda, sorry.
What UK is doing with Uganda, with Rwanda, is actually international. Because people have found refuge in UK, you cannot be transferred to another country. Yes, Rwanda can have a very good governance structure. But let us assume we are setting a precedent.
Right.
Now, a country now decides to do that and decides to carry, refugees. So any third world country that doesn't have the kind of system that we have in Rwanda, how does that do? That's number one. Number two, apart from being against international law, one thing that we want to understand is that basically somebody coming from Iraq or somebody coming from Rwanda, Afghanistan, find himself in the UK, and then you want to bring him to Africa. Now, how does that look like? So in fact, what we're saying is that, well, it's good that Rwanda has offered itself for this kind of thing. But the truth about it is that it certainly does not fit into the current status that we have in the world. And the truth is that until we change the legislative, that is the wording of the treaty, then the treaty remains so. So I think it's better for UK to stick to the treaty or refuse people coming, cannot even refuse. Restrict them to the treaty and let it be, interpreted as such.
As it is. Okay, thank you for that input. Miss Naima, I am sure you have something to say about the situation. And further help us ground this in more law and more legalese, as set precedent by Mr. Olu.
Thank you very much. I don't like using legalese anyway. So, well, I think the UK based its refusal on the fact that if you look at the 2020 United States report on trafficking, yes. on trafficking against persons in Rwanda, it's still considered as a tier 2 country, meaning they've not done the basic minimum in relation to combating trafficking. And the fact that actually, like Mr. Olu said, if I come from Iraq, or even if it's, Uganda, and I've sought my asylum in the UK, you bringing me back to Rwanda, there are consequences to that. Like I'm easily exposing myself to what I'm running away from, I'll give an example, in Uganda. So if I'm seeking asylum out of Uganda to the UK, then you're like, you know what, Naima, we are repatriating you to Rwanda. What are the odds that what I'm running from will find me in Rwanda, So yes, I don't see the justification. Yes, Rwanda has offered, but I think the context at which the repatriation is done should be considered. It's not general that whoever seeks asylum in the UK is going to be taken, to Rwanda. I think it should be specific on what grounds is this person seeking asylum, or what grounds is this person being repatriated, in the country. By the time I apply to UK, I know there are other countries. So I chose UK for reasons, ABC, probably because of the security, the protection. I know my life is at stake. I'll give an example with the political climate we have in our country. If I seek asylum in the UK from Uganda, there are reasons as to why I'm going to the UK. So the UK say, or the law saying, you know what, go to Rwanda, there's no work done. It's like, running away from the living room and hiding in the bedroom. It doesn't make sense. Right. I think that's all I can say for now. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have particularly asked the two of you because I know you have a lot of insight on these matters. So there's Javan and Smart Talk Cafe, but the two of you with the understanding of law and how that helps us as a system work, as a human system work. Thank you so much for that. Now, I think David is back. I saw him trying to get back. David.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
You're back. Yes, we can hear you and we can see you. So please talk to us about some of the work you have done around human trafficking.
Yeah.
Particularly Never Again Rwanda.
Yeah, I work with Never Again Rwanda. We've done a number of work on human trafficking. Specifically for us, we do research on human trafficking and also raising awareness as well as advocacy for different gaps that are realized through the research. So if we can speak about what we got from the research, one of the complex things with human trafficking is it's a very clandestine crime. So in most cases, you don't even know that it's happening. Apart from that, even the entities that are supposed to, like the enforcement agencies, the frontline workers who are supposed to work with to identify people who are being trafficked, the people who give documentation, for example. Most of these people actually are not, they have very limited knowledge about human trafficking. Even when we're collecting data, sometimes some of them would be shocked. They say, human trafficking, does it even exist? How can you trade humans? So really the traffickers benefit from that low awareness levels. But on top of that, there are other existing challenges. From what we talked about, we really focused on the demand side of events, but they also have the supply side. What are some of the basic reasons that make people vulnerable to human trafficking? So there are those conditions that on the ground that actually push people to be susceptible, because usually from our research, what we found was the driving force was through manipulation, by promising a better life, better benefits if you're going to get a job, and then also taking advantage of existing vulnerabilities. For example, if someone is displaced, someone is a refugee, young people are unemployed. So in such a way, they could easily lure people by promising them a lot of money that when you go, maybe we take you to Saudi Arabia, you're going to be working, and then when we shall give you a job, from the job, you'll be given time off, you'll be able to study, and then it's really still attractive to the victims, and then they end up going. So another thing that also we did realize is the borders, people moving across the countries. In East Africa, we have a lot of porous borders, so people can easily cross from one country to another. And also existence of these labor export companies. Labor export companies not all of them are genuine. Some of them, I think, like in Uganda, I've seen cases where some of them have been convicted actually of human trafficking. So it means some of these labor companies use this legal registration as labor export, and then at the end of the day, use it for human trafficking. We do also realize that human trafficking has got a lot of money in it, by the way. Apart, I think, from drugs, it is the second most expensive clandestine crime. So there's a lot of money involved. So people are bribed. Sometimes even government agencies are involved. So it's not really easy to manage human trafficking. Also, on the other hand, we also have, in most times when you talk about human trafficking, people get the concept that it's going to be cross-border. Sometimes it's even within the borders. And also, I had an interesting point of also difference in laws, harmonization of international law. What the laws that you might have in Middle East countries may be different from what we have today. And there is a model law by the UN, the Palamo Protocol. In some countries, like in Rwanda, for example, the law that was developed actually based on the Palamo Protocol. So it's sort of really, it's comprehensive about human trafficking. But now if you go to other countries, it might not be the same. So also another issue that is still very strong and an existing challenge is the victim assistance and rehabilitation. For example, if you repatriate people, if you rescue people, what are the existing system? How do you treat them? Because most of them come with very different trauma. Some of them have, for example, when we're doing our research, we found that some of them come with addictions. For example, someone has been drugged. For example, most people who get involved in the sexual exploitation, they have to drug them for them to get in order. So someone comes back and someone is under addiction. How are you going to do addiction management? Some of them come back with sex addiction. So really, actually, we are, I think at this point, there's another study that we're planning to undertake that was going to look at the services provided in this regard. But when they come back, they're diverse. Also, what we realized is the existing systems we might have around are more tailored towards women or girls as opposed to boys and men. That's why when you look at numbers, even when we're doing numbers, our data was saying that majority of people are girls, the victims are girls. But on the other hand, we also realize that the existing system is better designed to capture girls compared to boys. So most times they even go underreported. So really, when you look at human trafficking, you find it's really a complex issue that requires a wholesome action from different stakeholders. And also, I think one of the most important things is to raise awareness from the frontline responders, the law enforcement agencies, the people who give documentation, but also to raise awareness among the young people as well in schools, and also to try and solve the supply side of issues. For example, what are some of the reasons that are pushing people to want to leave their countries and go to other countries? I think that actually could be one of our recommendations to focus on that, around that.
Thank you so much, David. So what I would ask of you is that, are you able to please share some of these resources that you're citing from, so that we can further improve our knowledge on these matters? Also, perhaps drop us a contact, because I suppose some of the members here, some of the panelists, some of the guests would like to get in touch with you and just examine this question a bit further. Now, thank you so much, David. Thank you once more.
Thank you very much. I can share a link of the report, and also I'm going to share my contacts as well.
Thank you so much. Just please drop that on the chat box. Thank you. Now, for the team, this amazing panelists, I would like us to round this up, but my question for when we're rounding this up and as you give your closing remarks is this: how can the legal team, so the members here who are part of, have practiced law, know the law, so how can this team work with us as an organization, Smart Talk Cafe that is, and other organizations such as ours? How can you work with us to make sure that advocacy goes hand in hand with policy improvement? And I know perhaps the people who are watching this, I suppose there must be a lawyer or two who knows the law around this matters. So please feel free to chime in. But first, I would ask that Ms. Naima, would you please answer my question and then also give us your closing remarks, and then we go to Mr. Olu.
Thank you, Joy. Before I respond to the question, let me just say that last week I came across a video on social media on a girl, a 16-year-old girl who was trafficked, and I'm going back to the kafala system. So the kafala system is one where, your employer holds your documents and processes all your travel documents. So they're entitled to your travel documents. They, hold on to them. And what this documentary is talking about is where the investigators were on an app where they can, buy African house helps and maids. So they're being traded without their knowledge. And so they would show us what goes on, like you inquire, and then you are sold off to another family at a very high price without your knowledge. And so for you, you think you're being taken to, a family member, but it's the person that's totally, So why am I saying that kafala system could be one that is upholding, trafficking? It's because you as an individual, you have no say on your documents. You have no say on terminating your contract until the person holding your documents give you the documents back and tell you, what, you can now go back home. And with that now, if you look at the Gulf system, their citizens are more important than you are foreigners. So they'll protect their citizens and not you. And I'm not saying all of them, but those are the few loopholes we have in the different, laws of the Gulf and that of us who are under the common law system. So that then, like Mr. Olu said, we need to get a law that harmonizes the two laws and get which law can operate for international relations. Then in relation to how can you work with the team to make sure advocacy works hand in hand with the policies? Currently, the East African countries have individual laws in their countries that govern and regulate trafficking or human trafficking in the country. What that has become the biggest loophole, and one thing that the traffickers manipulate, because you find that the laws in a specific country might be strict, whereas those in another country are not strict. I'm going to give an example of the East African region. Uganda has a law, Tanzania has a law, Rwanda has a law, Kenya has a law. But with research, you find that East African human trafficking is on the rise every day. Why? It's because we don't have a unifying policy for all the East African regions that we have signed to or that binds us as a country. I remember a couple of years ago, we tried to engage with the East African Legislative Assembly, to pass a law, an anti-human trafficking law that is East African based, one that regulates all the East African countries. That way, maybe we could have a chance in combating human trafficking in the East African region. But until now, that bill is still on the shelf. It hasn't been passed. And this is one of the weaknesses that we have in combating human trafficking. So until we push, advocate, and call for the IALA to pass this law to regulate human trafficking in the East African region, even when Rwanda has the strongest governance and Uganda's governance is still weak, that will be the weakest link we have as a region. People will be smuggled into Uganda to be trafficked to another country. The same goes to whether the governance, in Uganda becomes stricter and Kenya is still, on the law. We'll still use the same as a weakness for people to be trafficked. And two, as lawyers or as people who are working in the legal system, we need to pay keen attention. Like someone said, David said, the hands behind human trafficking are the strongest. These are people who are really rich, influential, and can buy their way in any system that we have in the country. So once we have that at the back of our mind, then we will know how to maneuver and ensure that the victims of trafficking are protected and prosecution is done to the latter. The first thing is that they're not prosecuted because they intimidate the victims. They pay their way out of cases. So we need to have a conscience of standing by what we vouch for in protecting and representing our clients. And also for victims, okay, you might not force victims not to be bribed, but still, if the victim has belief in you that you will take the case on, they cannot easily be swayed by money. So even when the perpetrators pay them to drop the cases and they know that you have a case and the police and the system, like the prosecution is ready to prosecute, then that is the only way we can combat human trafficking. How can, I work with Youth Against Slavery Movement. It's an organization that works, it's a young people's organization for young people, and we work with young people globally to combat modern day slavery and human trafficking. And our major work is on advocacy, creating information, and building the strongest young people's movement, because we believe information is key in combating human trafficking. So what we do is to inform, make people realize, train, so that it is spread. Our target is to work in all African countries, but so far we're working with 5 countries in the whole of East Africa, but in 5 different regions. We want to ensure that young people are actively and meaningfully engaged in combating human trafficking. It doesn't make sense for the old folks. Apologies, Mr. Olu, but that's a reference I have. For the old folks to sit on their tables and discuss strategies and what will work for the young people. It is best for the young people to decide what works best for them, because it's us who know what we really need. That way we are informing and trying to see how policies can be developed based on what the young people feel will work, and survival centered based on what survivors have experienced and what needs to be done. I think for me, that's all I can say for now. Thank you for this opportunity and for the time.
Thank you so much for being here. You have shed so much light, Naima. We really do appreciate you taking the time and for the insights. I mean, you have told us where we are, where we need to go, what we need to do, and mostly you have broken it down such that anyone listening to this knows the role they need to play in combating human trafficking. So thank you so much. Mr. Olu.
Yeah, thank you very much for these talks. Let me first of all say that I think I want to agree with Nema in terms of the coordination that she referred to with regard to making laws more compatible and comparable, to have a more unified legal system. But again, I also want to really agree with her that there's need coordination between countries within East Africa to have a kind of law that equates each other, so that you do not have a weak link, because an association is as strong as its weakest link. If there is a weak link, then you can be sure that that weak link affects the entire, efficiency of that particular organization. So that's very, very important. And again, one thing again, which I also agree with her, is about profiling these people and be able to investigate them as much as possible. So I believe that in profiling, all the things that she said is actually very, very germane to, effectively combating human and people smuggling. So I want to believe that we want to do this. And I think, let me say this, that I want to reach out, I will reach out to Madam Nema to see if there's some, ways in which you can really collaborate. I live in the United Kingdom, but again, there are so many ways that we can really collaborate within Uganda, as well as the larger East African community, to actually bring combating trafficking to a stop. So I think I will reach out with her beyond this and then see what you can do, and also reach out to Smart Talk after to I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for being here, sir. You have been very insightful. I mean, you helped me pronounce your name well and also helped the rest of us understand these issues more. You have offered a larger scope of understanding, which is something we would not have had if you're not here. So thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate your time and your contribution.
Thank
and
you.
we look forward to you interacting with Ms. Naima and interacting with Smart Talk Cafe. Karibu sana.
Okay, thank
Now,
you.
thank you.
But Mr.
So
Olu,
Joyce,
yeah, looking forward to interacting with you.
Yeah.
I think the two of you should hit each other's inbox right now. Now, I don't know if Joyce has already stepped out or if she's somewhere, Badu. Joyce. Okay, that's fine. I think she has left the meeting, but that's fine. She's joining another one. So towards the end, Maurice will give Smart Talk Cafe's sentiments and also G-Talk's sentiments as well. So Javan, you have been very insightful in helping us ground this whole conversation. I mean, we started with you, so I'm aiming to end with your story as well. Tell us, what do you feel like this conversation was actually insightful? Was it helpful? And how can we further keep this conversation going? I mean, alongside your closing remarks. Javan?
Thank you, Joy, for this moment. And of course, it was insightful and also a great opportunity being aware of what is the problem about this issue regarding refugee trafficking, because I think if this was really a common issue which has been taking place, but it is rare to be talking about this issue. And when people are saying human trafficking, I see more refugees want to be targeted because of their conditions they're living in. So it is really good to have this opportunity for having this insight from different experts in this field, which helps personally me to understand what is really needs to be done and what policies needed to be implemented. Either for non-government organizations and also government on their side to counterattack this increasing number of people being trafficked. Yeah. So one thing I can just end up saying is that this is something everyone needs to take into account. And as everyone here has been saying that this is an issue many people do not want to talk about. And if you see people are doing this stuff thing, is the people who are having such kind of power to point out that they're doing this, it is a risk for you who is pointing that person. So which makes some people really to be silent, and even those people are trafficked to speak about it because they know that after saying that their safety is in danger. And that is something really people need to do much awareness, and also finding an appropriate approach to share their stories in the ways which will not affect them back after sharing their stories. This is the one of the things each of us can do by educating them and also identifying approach the victims of human trafficking they can use to really, if maybe people can try to hide their information in terms of identity, so that really to keep having data. Because I was really, once I was having this invitation, I was looking on internet and finding out and seeing what is really about. And I was a bit, I was a bit shocked. I was like, how come? This is really, the information is like, is it because it's not there, or maybe there's something wrong within this issue? So we need really to everyone to do much work in finding information which can help us to do that kind of awareness and advocacy. Because you can't have, Nema said something like, in the law, lawyers can't really say something without an evidence. So how can you advocate the problem without having evidences of what is happening? So this is all we need to do that will be done as long as we all have the common understanding of this issue. Thank you for being with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Javan. Thank you for your contribution again. Thank you for being so insightful. You know, you've talked about your lived experiences, and that is something that not very many people will easily share, particularly with the public. You have also mentioned something that we should be careful about the information we put out, which reminds me. So thank you so much, Javan, for joining us. I appreciate it. We really appreciate you being here. Asante. So Maurice, this reminds me of a pie chart I saw where most people, I think I saw this on like your socials or something, where most people who get recruited for trafficking get recruited via social media. Now, would you please come on board giving us your closing remarks and talking a little bit about the how and the why, and do you feel like this conversation has actually reached the, I want to say tamati. I don't know why I want to say tamati, but do you feel like this conversation has actually achieved its purpose? I mean, we have had such a lovely panel. We have had a very interactive audience. But as Smart Talk Cafe, was this the aim, and has it been reached?
I want to thank every single person here. I think this is one of the conversations that you can be part of it. And when they tell you to give out your closing remarks, you just point to people and say, whatever they have said, I concur, and let's send it there. Because this has been very, very, very insightful for us and Smart Talk Cafe. This is one of the conversations that we really wanted to have. And Javan will tell you, in Rwanda, you will not reach out to anyone and they want to talk about human trafficking. That is not something that anyone wants to speak about it, because they feel there's the fear that is that someone will know I was talking about human trafficking, and there are always consequences around it. However, I think for us as Smart Talk Cafe is we want to challenge that, make sure that we can work together. Smart Talk Cafe can work with NAIM and her organization, can work together with Olo, can work together with Javan, who is at the camp, to make sure that the information is disseminated. Make sure that we now bring the data to the lawyers and bring the data to people who can now create policies and such kind of information, so that now it is evidence-based. And having these organizations come together, having these lawyers coming together and opening up and having discussions around it, this is something that is very important, and something very important to us. You had mentioned about the charts. Yes, there was the Federation Human Trafficking Report 2021. It was released last week. It was on Friday. Yes, it was on Friday. The Federation Human Trafficking Report. So I will share, I think I will share with you. And it had data, the new data now, looking into the new avenues of human trafficking, labor trafficking, especially men have topped in terms of labor trafficking, sex trafficking. Right now, women are at 70%. Mostly it has reduced in terms of age. They're not targeting women above 30 years and above. So they're targeting small girls from 15 years and above. So they've changed the tactics. They're not now going for the older generation. Number two, number three, when you look at recruitment, how recruitment is being done, as Naiman said, you see there is an app where people are going and discussing about how they can buy. So Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok are the topmost social media platforms that are being used specifically for human trafficking and gaining data. So because that is easier for manipulating young people. Human trafficking has changed from right now, the highest perpetrators of human trafficking are people who are close to you, family members, what do you call family members, uncles, friends, because based on the report, it was saying traffickers have started using a different tactic where instead of getting directly to the person that they want to traffic, they get to the family member, then tell the family member the benefits that they're going to get. Now the family member becomes the perpetrator and now helps in terms of trafficking and all that. So those are the kind of information that are being shared under the report. Right now, kidnapping as one which was one of the ways in human trafficking was being done has reduced to 1%. So they've already seen kidnapping people brings a little bit of issue. There's a lot of police investigations and all that. So if we use family members to get the people that we want, then it makes it easier. Then the highest form of human trafficking, especially for labor trafficking, the highest coercive actor when it comes to labor trafficking is in terms of loans and financial help. So whatever they do is they come with the financial help. They give you a certain amount of money. When you're not able to pay, then it gives them the leeway to be able to move and traffic people because they're using the agencies to pay for that. So that is the kind of information that is in the report. I think I will share with every single person here because I have your emails. We'll share them through the emails. However, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank the panel. This panel was rich. Information has been shared. We have opened up and shared so much. And I hope that those who are listening and those who have joined us have learned 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. However, let's not stop at conversation only. Let's do the actions. Definitely, I'm going to reach out to Naima and say, okay, how can we do? What can we do about the policy? What can we do? Can we do advocacy? Can we mobilize people so that now it is well known? Can we mobilize conversation so that people can start discussing about the draft policy so that people understand it is something that is very important for us? Inviting Mr. Olu to come and give us advice and wisdom in terms of this kind of information, making sure that things are working very well. I will finish with that by thanking you and hoping that this conversation is not going to end here. We're going to continue on our social media platforms, and we are inviting you guys to come share wisdom and share information that you can share. Thank you so much, and over to you, Joy.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us, Mr. CEO of Smart Talk Cafe. I like saying that. Thank you for providing this forum. I mean, every time people are having these conversations, it is very informative, very enlightening as well. That any minute, first of all, just to remind us that at any given time, anyone can become a refugee, number one. Number two, to remind us that anyone can fall prey to being trafficked at any given time. So what we need to do is we need to stay informed. We need to inform our people, to inform other people, just to spread information and spread knowledge. This forum has been beautiful. I am overwhelmed. I mean, from the expertise to the wisdom to how plainly the words were put, such that anyone is able who listen to this is able to understand. I am very thankful to you, the panelists. Thank you so much. Javan, thank you so much. Naima, thank you so much. Mr. Olu, thank you so much. For every single person who joined us, we really, really appreciate you coming on board. Special shout out to David. David, you came and you gave us so much information and resources. We appreciate your contribution. Every single person who joined, we appreciate you coming. We hope that you have learned something that you can tell us how to improve. You can share your comments with us so that we know how to further engage with you. Now, I invite you all to go to our social media platforms, Smart Talk Cafe, across all platforms, Facebook, Twitter. Just interact with us, tell us your views, tell us what you think, ask us, invite us to share with you more information where needed. Feel free, reach out if you want to reach out to Naima, if you want to reach out to Maurice, please do so on our social media platforms, and we will keep it interactive. So thank you so much. And with that, we leave it as I'll wrap this up and remind you of the 2022 theme, which is, does anyone remember? I asked that question in the beginning. What is the 2022 theme for World Refugee Day, which is today? Anyone? Does anyone remember? Anyone? Okay. So again,
Yes, I
let's
do
remember
remember.
that you do? Okay, Griffin, what was it?
Looking for safety or championing safety or something.
Close enough, yay! But the right to seek safety.
Ah, nice, yeah.
Close enough. So thank you for your contribution, Griffin. And with that, bye everyone. Please feel free to leave at your pleasure. And that you can see your screen.